doing, girl?
Great.
Good, good.
But it don't sing and dance.
Hop down right there and make sure your microphone's working.
It sounds good to me. Whew. I don't quite look like an NFL player, do
No,
I?
you don't. Maybe an NFL cheerleader. How about that?
Oh, thank you.
There, you bet, you bet. Let's talk about, we're going to talk about some different things, but over the last couple of days, we've been talking about a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff as far as the NFR goes, and even that's carried over to some of my other interviews. You know, I think that stuff is really, really interesting. But we've covered, you know, coming down the alley. We've talked about coming around the first barrel and the last barrel and all that good stuff. And but touch on a little bit, you know, from your NFR experience and coming into this. Talk about how busy it is out here. Everybody, I think they just think, you know, you're 13 seconds in the arena and that's it. You know, that's all you have to do all day. But that's not necessarily the case, is it?
No, getting prepared to come to the NFR is about a 2-week ordeal before you get actually here. The packing, especially for the girls, you know, the packing the equipment for the horse, the clothes for yourself, making sure the truck and trailer are all ready to go. And
right.
Once you get here, then the rat race really starts. You're trying to keep your horse, you know, him focused for the run that
right.
you're fixing to make the first night. And like, we've had 2 rounds, and so the horses are used to the building now.
Sure.
So some of them might be getting a little ratty in the alleyway, you know, and that makes everybody's nerves go crazy.
Absolutely.
And then, other than keeping your horse focused, and then you have to keep yourself focused, among other things, going and seeing your fans. You know, we love the fans and our sponsors.
Right.
And I wanted to say a great big thank you to Curl Girl.
Yeah.
They've been absolutely wonderful.
Absolutely.
And, you know, the sponsors help the cowboys and cowgirls throughout the year, so this is kind of our time to give back and say big thank you to them.
Sure, and that's the deal too. You know, there's certain sports, you know, and I think rodeo and NASCAR, you know, give back to the fans so much, you know, because, you know, without the fans, you know, a lot of this we couldn't be doing what we're doing, or y'all couldn't be doing what
Right.
you're doing, and it seems like a really important part of, you know, the NFR or any rodeo. You know, I mean, there's so many rodeos throughout the year that, you know, everybody has to go to, you know, to even qualify for the NFR, and but I think the fans are really important. I like to, you know, as far as talk about a little bit, you know, all year long there's a lot of outdoor pens, there's a lot of indoor pens, big pens, small pens, but there's not one that you go to all year that's as small as the Thomas and Mack Center. Is that right?
Well,
Or is there some that's pretty
there's
close?
some that's smaller.
Really? No
Oh,
kidding.
yes. Maybe it seems a little smaller to me. I don't know. This one didn't, when I ran here in 2008,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't seem as small to me as like the American Airlines in Dallas. It was, I think it was the alleyway setup. It
Right.
was about 2 panels long.
Mm-hmm.
And then I felt like it was about 2 strides to the first barrel and
Yeah.
2 strides to the second.
Right.
It was a 12-second pattern.
How does that change, you know, from, say, Cheyenne or anything like that? You know, how do you approach a smaller arena compared to a big outdoor arena?
Well, it's all in the timing of your horse and how you train them. And like with me, I try to release to turn my horse,
Mm-hmm.
because you're in the alleyway holding them. And in a tight situation like that, when you get to that barrel, I use my body language a lot, and I release. I kind of set my hand down on their neck.
Yeah.
So that's their cue to turn.
Right.
And so when I take off in the alleyway, I give them their head, but yet I still have a little bit of contact with them. And so my timing is a lot of everything. In a big pen like Cheyenne, you know, you don't want to come running from the back.
For sure.
And it's a long ways to the first barrel.
Right.
So even in that situation, though, I release to turn, and then I just kind of guide him around the barrel. And a lot of people don't realize that timing running barrels is meaning winning first or last.
Right.
Or nothing.
Sure, exactly.
And so it's kind of like when you're dancing with someone and you feel like you both have 3 set of feet.
Yeah, sure.
It's kind of like that when you're
Right.
running barrels too. If you're not in sync with your horses, it feels rough.
Right, sure.
And so I feel like the timing, a big pin, a little pin, indoors, outdoors, is the key, I think, to be successful in any situation.
Right. I'm fixing to ask you a really dumb question, and I haven't thought this out before I even asked it, so I'm going to go for it here. No matter how big the arena or how small, is the barrel pattern, is it the same distance from barrel 1 to barrel 2, 2 to 3, you know? Does that make sense? I mean, even
the WPRA has a set guideline for a standard pattern, but you know, when you get into a situation like the Thomas and Mack, you know, you have to go so many feet off the wall.
Off the wall. That's where they measure from.
That's kind of your guideline.
Right. So if you know, say you're practicing at the house, I guess you kind of look at the schedule and see what rodeos are coming up, you know, throughout the year, and you know the size of arenas and stuff like that, or the length of the barrels, you know, between each other. Do they just stay the same at your house when you're training your horses or anything like that?
Pretty much.
I
mean, I have just a big outdoor arena, and I guess I'm too lazy to get off and move them.
Yeah, exactly.
My son, he works their ground, and so they're kind of buried.
Right, sure. Talk about, you know, a lot of the team ropers and calf ropers, you know, they've been talking about horse position, horsemanship. You know, talk a little bit how important that is. You know, do you want to keep your body squared, you know, when you're making the turn, you know, you're kind of paint a picture through, I guess, really through the whole run. You know, you're coming in, you're going to go left or right. Is that something, you know, are you leaning a little bit? Are you staying square? You know, talk about that a little bit as far as barrel racing is concerned.
I prefer, and I try to stress this a lot when I'm teaching either my students, I have a lot of people come for lessons, that a horse can feel a fly on their back.
Right.
So therefore, he can definitely feel your body up there twisting and moving around. So I really point out that they need to try to keep their hips and their shoulders as square over the horse as they can.
Sure.
And like the length of their stirrups, I see a lot of people, their stirrups are too long.
Right.
And if you don't have your stirrups adjusted correctly, you can't balance.
Mm-hmm.
And balance is a lot to barrel racing too. You know, you're hanging on to a 1,000-pound or a 12,000-pound horse. There's
Sure.
there's a lot of strength there.
Right, sure.
And so I really stress to people to stay as center over their horse as they can, and you know, put your stirrups where you can stand up, you know, and have balance.
Right.
And I mean, everybody has their own way, their comfortable way of riding, but I always say, you know, stay square. And if you'll see pictures like up there above me on the slideshow, I have several horses that have different styles. The buckskin Rare Dillon, he goes in on his hiney and then kind of does a rollback turn.
Right.
And you can draw a line from my shoulders right down the middle of my body, right down the middle of his chest, all the way to the ground.
Right, sure.
And then there's some other horses in those pictures, like the horse I have now. He's a bigger horse, and he drops the turn. He doesn't drop his shoulder. He just drops all over. And he's long strided, so I had to adjust my timing to ride him. And I trained him, but then when I started competing on him and going faster, my timing was bad just because of the difference in the stride from a little quick horse. You know, it's kind of like driving a Corvette, and then you go get in a semi-truck.
Absolutely.
You know, you have to do things just a little different. And so several times I'd get kind of mad at him because I didn't think he was running.
Right, sure.
And I just, you know, my mom was like, Annessa, he's moving. You just don't feel like he is.
Exactly.
And with him, even with him dropping, you can still draw that line from the middle of my body all the way down the front of his front legs. You know, it's all straight.
Right, sure.
And normally I have my hand touching their neck.
Right, sure. And that cues them a lot.
That cues them. And I mean, if people have watched cutting horses, reining horses, you hardly ever see the rider doing much with their hands.
Right.
It's very subtle.
I guess it's a lot in the legs as well.
A lot in the
legs. A lot
legs.
of pressure and
yes.
that kind of deal.
And like in a barrel horse, there was a friend of mine that came for lessons, and I had told her how to keep your left. We were going around the left barrel first, and she didn't realize you could put your foot in on the left side, but you had to put your pressure on the right side too, to keep the rib cage from floating.
Sure.
And so she didn't really feel it until it actually happened to her, and I taught her how to correct that, and so she felt it right then, the right way and the wrong way.
Right.
And she was like, nobody's ever taught me this before.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So I was excited that, that she was feeling it.
You could just see it click, I imagine, with her.
Exactly.
And I've kind of went through that same thing. I relate what you probably know by now. I relate everything to roping because that's what I know. Well, I kind of know it, but not really. But as far as heeling, when you make that corner, that kind of reminds me of maybe going around a barrel, that kind of deal.
Very,
pressure,
very much.
With your left leg and then sending them with the right leg. It's kind of that same idea, isn't it?
Same concept, because, it's timing also on the heeling end. It's timing with any event, whether it's rough stock riding, roping, running barrels. And with the roping horses, like you say, you kind of have a little bend in their ribs.
Right.
But if you get too much,
sure,
then you get that floating feeling.
Yeah, kind of working out, that kind of deal. Talk to me a little bit. I've always heard, when you're coming around one of those barrels, about finding that next barrel. As you're coming around and looking, am I interpreting that correct?
There are a lot of people that really, they stress on looking up and looking at the next barrel.
Right.
I don't necessarily do that. I figure the horse is smarter than I am, so he's going to find it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And so in the turn, I just concentrate on riding him in the turn. And if he's doing his job, I don't have to look up and find it.
Right.
He's going to make that complete turn, and he's going to go find it.
Right,
it's, when they're young, you kind of have to help them out a little bit. But hopefully the finished product, I'm just kind of along for the ride.
Right, sure, exactly. Well, you're very well known for, training horses and that kind of deal. Talk to me about the process of, getting a colt. You always hear, with roping, if you're kind of new to the deal, a lot of folks think, well, I'll get this 4-year-old horse. I'm just now starting roping. We're going to learn together, that kind of deal. What would you recommend for somebody just getting started barrel racing, and walk us through that? How do you even start? I guess you select a horse, but you want something that's probably done it before if you're just starting out. Is that right?
That's usually better. The horse, I've seen horses teach people a lot.
Right.
And so if you're starting out, I think it's always better if you find a horse that knows what they're doing. But then again, sometimes the person and the horse can learn together.
Right, sure.
And so, you just kind of have to do what fits your personality. If you want to work at training that horse along with yourself, go that route.
Right, sure.
Or if you don't want to have to spend the extra time, you can just get on and let them do it.
Right,
so,
right.
And I really think personality in a horse is real important. With me especially, I like one that has a personality. He might be funny, or
sure,
maybe a little, I guess cocky, I would
right,
say.
Right, sure, absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And they're gritty because I'm a little reserved when I ride. I'm not a real aggressive rider.
Right.
And so the horse that's a little aggressive fits me better.
Sure.
And so some people that are aggressive riders, that want to kick hard, or they need one that's a little more laid back.
Right, sure.
It's all, it's just kind of like picking your partner.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, folks, we're sitting here with Annessa Self, NFR qualifier, and I want to say hello to the folks on the internet there. We're streaming this live at nrsworld.com, and I wanted to let y'all know, too, that if you have any questions at any time, Terry will kind of be watching around, or I'll walk out there with a microphone, so just raise your hand or walk up here, or we'll get to you for sure. But at any time, if you have a question for Annessa, she'll be more than happy to answer that for you. But I guess I want to talk about what's going on in the barrel racing so far. Sherry Servy's pretty hot.
She is definitely on her mojo.
Yeah,
Her
yeah,
and
she
Stingray
is.
are looking good.
Yes. Let's see. We're going into round 3 tonight, but she won round 1. She won round 2 as well. Is
Yes,
that right?
Yes.
I can't imagine. I mean, I've never won more than $50, and she's won 18,000 and 2 nights in a row.
Yeah. And back to that timing thing. Last night, if you got to watch the NFR on TV or in person, Stingray just almost started her first barrel too quick, and that timing thing came into play.
Right.
Sherry she adjusted her and did it very subtle, because you can only move your hands, and in a square about like this, and have control of your horse.
Right.
And she did that. I mean, her timing was perfect and I noticed on the first barrel, and it was a good barrel race last
Right,
night.
sure.
It was real good. The girls were, I think the jitters were out of some of them, and
it's on now, isn't it?
yeah, and it was a good barrel race. So there was some bad luck, but that happens.
All
You
right,
just
sure.
Keep your chin up and go on to the next one.
And I guess, kind of talk about that as well. I mean, knocking barrels over, I know in the team roping, they keep talking about, the average isn't even in play yet, as far as guys getting times on all 10 steers, that kind of deal. It's like, you go out and miss your first 2, and those guys aren't even worried about it, that kind of deal. Talk about the average a little bit in barrel racing.
Well, the average pays well.
Right.
And your goal is to try to get around them
Sure.
all 10 rounds. But when you're dealing with an animal, you never know if a slip of the foot or, just having a bad day. But even if you do knock a barrel over, you're still not out of the average.
Right.
It's hard to make 10 runs and be clean.
Right.
That's what you hope for.
Sure.
And as the week goes along, you'll see girls, they'll start thinking about the average a little
Right.
bit more, and you might see them safety up just a little bit.
Sure, and get around those barrels.
Yeah.
What percentage, this is dumb question number 2.
No question
Oh
is
man,
dumb.
this is a doozy. Out of 10 rounds, will any of them go all 10 rounds without knocking a barrel over at all? Is that common that they'll go all 10 and no barrels knocked down or anything like that?
You can do it. I mean,
Okay.
there's girls very capable of doing it.
I got you.
Any horse in there, is capable of
Sure.
making 10 runs, and I mean, because none of them are perfect.
Right.
We're all human, and the horses, they have good days and bad days. So, but there can definitely be some girls make all 10 rounds
Right,
and leave
sure,
them up.
Sure. And as far as the average goes, I mean, you've been in that situation. When you talk about safety up and not knock a barrel down, I mean, at some point in there, at round 6, round 7, do you start doing a little bit of math, to go into, I guess you can't safety up too much, but, not knocking barrels over, do you kind of have an idea of where you need to be, to stay in that average but still knock a barrel down? Talk about that a little bit.
Myself, I don't.
You just
I don't look.
Right.
I don't want to know. I just try to do my thing every night. There's some girls that may want to know,
For sure.
but not me.
Right.
I'd rather not know. And at the end of the week, hopefully I get to go get a big fat paycheck.
Right, sure. So you're telling me that if, let's say you have to win, say at least second place to win the world,
You're putting the pressure on me.
I am. I'm fixing to, and I don't even know if this will make sense, but, let's say you, in there somewhere, or say it's more like, 3rd or 4th place, and you're going to win the world. Are you trying to win that go-around, or are you trying to maybe win 2nd or 3rd? I mean, how aggressive will you be? If you just need to win 3rd or 4th, you need to get a check, let's say that. Are you going to go out there and make a round-winning run, or, how are you going to approach that?
Myself, I would probably just go for it.
Right, and that's what got you there.
In high school, I remember going into the high school finals. I had to win that day.
Right.
I had to win the round that day.
Right.
And I was like, I'm just going for it.
Sure.
And luck wasn't with me that day. I drug the first barrel over to win the round. And so that ended up, I didn't get to go to nationals. But I was okay with it.
Right.
I went out trying.
And that's the deal, I look at a lot of times is if you don't beat yourself and they beat you, you know, I guess congratulations to them, you know, that kind of deal.
And actually, I went with my friend that won.
Oh yeah.
Won the state finals, and I went with her to be a friend and support her.
Right.
You know, I'm like, well, if I can't go, I'll go support you.
Sure. And you're a tight knit family, you know, as far as barrel racing goes. I mean, I guess y'all help each other, or you know, a lot of times it seems like you may not know what you're doing wrong, but somebody else does that's watching you run.
They can see it sometimes.
Right. Talk about that a little bit. Do y'all help each other out a little bit? Or you kind of. Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things.
I guess if somebody asks,
if you ask, or you know, if they see maybe something that might help you with timing.
Right.
You know, they might say, "Hey, try this." That might help.
Sure.
But on an everyday basis, you know, you just kind of, when you're riding, you just kind of watch, and you just kind of ask yourself, well, I wonder if I did that to my horse, if it would make it better.
Right, sure.
You know, and so, I mean, I feel like if you think you can't learn anything new, you need to take a step back, because every day you can learn something.
Absolutely.
You know, and I do anyways.
Right, sure. You're a very accomplished barrel racer and horse trainer, and growing up, you know, who did you idolize as far as, you know, and even if it wasn't in barrel racing, but you may have been a show horse deal or something like that, but, you know, horsemanship and kind of the total package, who did you kind of idolize growing up?
Well, I followed my mom. My mom is very well known in the barrel racing industry, and her name is Marva, and I grew up on a pony riding behind her every day, and so I feel like she's my idol.
Right,
she really is. And her style, she told me one day when she was, I think she was at a jackpot or something. She was watching the cowboys loping around, and she noticed back then they were kind of moving their elbows.
Right, sure.
And so she got to watching, and their elbows were in timing with that horse. And so she started doing it, and she goes, I know my mom looked out there and thought, what in the world is she doing out there flopping her elbows around?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But she was trying to learn to get in timing with those horses, and she said that's how I put a stop on a horse.
Right.
And, you know, because she had to learn her from scratch, and so some of the things that she learned as a kid, you know, I followed in her footsteps, and I really idolize her. She's one of the few people that released to turn a barrel.
Right, sure.
And she told me she started training like that for me when I was little, because I wasn't big enough to really pull a horse. And so she said that she needed to teach him to turn pretty automatic. And so I've kind of stressed that throughout my years of training.
Right.
And speaking of my mom, I have to tell you this real funny story. I went to Southwestern Oklahoma State University, and I won the state, my region, and so I went on to the college finals, which is in Bozeman, Montana, and she went with me. And she is very good at adding numbers. You just give her a list of numbers, and she can come up with it in 2 seconds. Well, I went into the nationals probably in 6th or 7th place, you know, behind other regions. And so at that finals, I had to go for it.
Right, sure.
And the last round, I didn't know what I had done, and so my mom came out there, and I said, "Well, Mom, did I do it? Did I win nationals?" And she goes, "I can't add today. I'm just so flustered."
Oh yeah, worked up, I'm sure.
She was so flustered, she couldn't add numbers for nothing.
Right, sure.
And luckily, it ended up my horse had worked, and I'd won the round, that last round, and I ended up winning the national collegiate barrel racing. Yeah.
Isn't that great?
So it was fun.
Yeah, I imagine. Annesa, I hate to do this, but they're cutting us off,
and
we're running.
Short?
Oh, I know. We've pretty much been behind schedule all day long. I've cut off world champion Walt Woodard. Yeah, don't feel bad.
No, I don't. Not at all.
I cut off Shay Fisher singing, and are you back with us tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Good deal.
Yes.
Good deal. What time? At 3 o'clock.
Yes.
At 3 o'clock.
And if there's any questions or anything you want to have talked about, come find me over at the Cinch and Curl Girl autograph signing. And
are you going to be signing autographs? Okay. Good deal. Good deal. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you would please, we appreciate her being here. If you would give a hand for Annessa Self here real quick.
Thank you.
And she's going to be over there signing autographs, so y'all head over there and visit with her. And Annessa, thank you very much for being with us.
I love doing this. It's fun.